James, what's going on, buddy? Thanks for being here today. Facebook group, I want to introduce you to my friend James Hornick from Hirewell. James, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. What's up, everybody?
Right on, man. Hey, I'm out here in California. What part of the world are you at right now?
Chicago, Illinois. So we're just, I think the thing that makes us all worse, it's still not quite warm enough to really go outside. So talk about being stuck indoors. We're still another month or two before like even getting outside to take a walk is going to be a great experience. But yeah, so.
Yeah, it's amazing what the how the little things are different for us right now, huh? Awesome, man. You have a family out there in Chicago? Tell us a little bit about your personal life.
Yeah, so it's just me and my wife live here, live in Ukrainian Village area, Chicago, so not too far north of a downtown, probably 20 minutes from the Loop or so. Been here for 20 years or so. So I grew up in outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. Went to Penn State. That was 20 years ago now. So I've actually lived here longer than anywhere else. So I'm not a native to Chicago, but
Got it.
been here a long time. But yeah, what else you want to know?
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. Yeah, for those of you that are just tuning in right now, James and I are going to talk here in a minute about pivoting our marketing message, our sales approach, and things like that. Things that we've been testing and seeing. James is the owner of Hirewell Recruiting, so we're going to get some good perspective on him. But before we get into that, James, tell us a little bit about your background. How'd you get in the recruiting industry and things like that?
So, good question. When I first got out of school, my first job, what brought me to Chicago originally was my first job. I was coming from like a small town in Pennsylvania. I wanted to like work in a large city. I just, had enough of the small town life. I was looking at like New York. I was looking at DC. I was looking at more East Coast places and also Chicago. Best job I ended up getting was here. And I'm actually glad that I did. But that was in the year 2000. It's kind of funny in retrospect. I was working for a company called UUNet, which was a subsidiary of WorldCom, which if you're familiar with the business history books, that blew up. So that was a good, I actually got out of there before that happened, but that was still an interesting kind of like, experience for my first job, having one of those, one of those experiences early on. Things you only hear about in movies. You don't realize they're real until you're living in one. Yeah, I was in tech sales. So I sold, hosting and stuff like that back when that was a little more, kind of cutting edge and whatnot. And then worked for a company called Akamai. They're still around. They're still a great firm. 9/11 happened at that point. And that's when, honestly, when things just got real tough. So the .com, it's funny because we're like in the third like big recession period, like in my professional life. I'd always talk about kind of the first two, talking about like the .com recession versus like the housing crisis is two very different animals, right?
Right.
So when we were working, just fast forward a minute, we were working in the 2008, 2009 timeframe. At that point in time, I was mostly doing tech recruiting, which was still doing all right. It wasn't great, but it was okay. Whereas in like that 2001, 2002, even 2003, tech was crushed. Like there were unemployed developers everywhere, which seems like, how can that be possible by today's standards? But
Right.
Point being is that was also how I kind of made this shift because like tech sales was also like a terrible place to be at that time frame. I also had the unfortunate experience of, this wasn't with Akamai, but with another firm I was with, you sell stuff that just doesn't work. Which is like the one thing I learned about sales is that like you're very much, a lot of what you do if you're doing tech sales, it comes down to how good is the product your company makes, right? And I hated that. I hated the fact that like I was tied to something that someone else made.
Right.
And that's also why I kind of want to get in recruiting because I like the idea of doing your own fulfillment. So if obviously you have a product that can, people that can say no, that can disagree or whatever. But at the end of the day, over the aggregate, like how well you do and how well you service your clients still comes down to how good you are and how well-defined your process is and how good the team is you work with. Like it's very much in your control on the aggregate. So that's kind of why I made this shift into recruiting. I also like the fact that like at the end of the day, you're helping people, you're getting people jobs,
Right.
as opposed to adding to the bottom line of some company, for some technology that, might not even be that interesting to you personally. So,
Yeah.
So I've been since 2004 is when I made that shift into recruiting. And then 2005 is when I joined Hirewell. So I'm one of the partners there. And when I joined, this is kind of driving into kind of where we are now. We were a small, 4 people or so, just doing tech recruiting. Now we're about 55, so we've grown a lot like in that time frame. Still very Chicago focused. We do have small offices in Atlanta and Dallas. But our goal had always been to be able to work with companies and really like truly solve their hiring challenge, or whatever their problem is, you know. And what that means is we first kind of build out, at this point, we have 6 different recruiting teams of very specialized people. So tech recruiting is still a very big piece of what we do. We have a team that does HR recruiting, specifically focused on, you know, hiring HR people, internal talent acquisition people, those types. We have a team that does sales recruiting, very focused on kind of the SaaS and tech sector. We have a team that does finance and accounting recruiting. About 5 years ago, this might dovetail on one of the other topics we get into. Myself and one of my colleagues started a digital experience and marketing recruiting team. And then we also got into kind of real estate services. So when we work with companies, we can actually impact a lot of aspects of their business. A lot of companies that need to hire, if they've got like a round of funding or major growth, like they don't need to hire just one thing. They need to hire all these areas. So it gives us kind of the ability to do that. We also do a lot of the other thing that I think we do that's interesting that isn't very common is a lot of custom solutioning. So a lot of organizations that may have a large scale hiring initiative, you know, I'm the first one, I could rail on this for hours. Like contingent is still a big part of what we do. It's still like the most common business model, but it's the dumbest business model. It's just like, it's expensive. From one side, it's like, it's super expensive. On the other side, you're doing free work unless it works out. And from the company side, it's very inconsistent in the results, and they're not always bought in because they're not putting skin in the game. And long story, that's a different tangent perhaps for a different podcast, but we do a lot of things in terms of more than just sourcing. So we work with companies. We're actually managing their ATS, managing the hiring plans, working with the hiring managers, actually doing a lot of that internal work, yet still making it a team function. That way we're able to fulfill very quickly, especially when there's large scale and urgent like initiatives. So.
So you guys are more partnered with your clients than you are just getting roles to work on. Yeah.
So I try to avoid the VMS world like the plague, although, you know, sometimes that's the only way you get into certain companies. But we always take more of a partnership and kind of strategic approach to the work we do. So
awesome. So what are you guys seeing, you know, just from your company, you know, with the impacts of coronavirus right now? Like, how's it impacting your company, and what are you seeing in the market just from your angle?
I mean, I hate to say no one saw this coming because it's been in the news since December, but like, I don't think there was a belief that this was really going to take the whole market down, you know, and this is tail risk 101, you know, so it's worst case scenarios pan out every once in a while, and probably once every 10 years. How should I say it? Like I think the kind of the two things I'd want to talk about are like content, sales, messaging, and then kind of fundamental business pivots. And I think those are two things that are related, but it's kind of how we reacted and how you can kind of, and that's why I want to hear more about kind of what you're doing as well too. But I thought that'd be a more interesting topic because, you know, as soon as this went down, it's okay. We're well positioned for this. We have services in a lot of areas. I remember the last day in the office, we actually did like a content like planning session because we do it like, I guess I didn't even mention, like we do a lot ourselves of like video podcast and like very content focused marketing stuff. So, you know, we have a team of people that's, you know, not dedicated content people, but, you know, people on the team that kind of get involved in this stuff. And, you know, we had kind of a conversation about, okay, we need to talk about work from home, you know, and luckily when we take on topics, we try to go a level or two deeper than the surface level obvious stuff. You know what I mean? So I did a podcast with my colleague, Jeff Smith, last week. And it was really about, because he's actually managed remote teams previously, like 100%, which is like, you know, and some other things that are kind of more fine line than that. It was almost amusing, like within like the first day of like the whole country working from home, like everywhere you went to LinkedIn is like, here are my work from home tips. And like, all right, I've seen like 100 of these already, guys. Like, and that was like, and I see a ton of those. And then I see a ton of like, and then people who like post about the coronavirus 24/7, you know, and it's not to crap on anyone's but like at some point you realize, okay, I'm glad I didn't want to focus on this stuff in particular because like it got real saturated real quick. So, but I think that, you know, my thought process or my thought on, from like a messaging standpoint is, and I wish I'd done this a week sooner than I did because it probably took me a few days to realize, but any kind of, I'm not big on salesy content. I like my content being more focused on actually like helping people, you know, making it like a value proposition. But when you're doing pure sales, like there's inherently, you know, any kind of messaging you're doing. But I think you have to shut down whatever you're doing. Whatever message you had before is just irrelevant and tone deaf.
Yep.
Is my take. So that was one of the first things I did is just kind of put a halt on whatever messaging I did. And honestly, like it took me a week to figure out what I even wanted to say,
Right.
And I think that I'm not a crisis management expert, I wasn't trained in that like level of PR, but I think just kind of, having some self-awareness of kind of the situation a lot of people are in, no matter what you're trying to accomplish as a business, like there's bigger problems right now. And kind of having an eye on that and kind of what you can do in first taking an approach of like, is there any way your business can help for the greater good, and talk about that, or talk about whatever content you wanted to talk about that wasn't really salesy. I think that's still okay. I just don't know how receptive people are, because I don't know. There's certain things people I just don't think I care about right now. You know what I mean? So
yeah, well, I think it's important to be, relevant with your conversation. If you're sitting, like you said, if you're going to hit the market with your normal everyday sales pitch, it's going to become off real tone deaf.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, like when I use the word selling, like it's probably different because my approach is never to really direct sale. My approach is always very similar to yours, is to add value to the marketplace, take people through funnels and through the process. And so I always feel comfortable doing what I'm doing because it's never a hard push or hard approach. And so I think that's been helpful. But even with that said, like, yeah, I've pivoted my messaging immediately to kind of support, exactly what's going on, just so, everything's coming off a little bit more like, yeah, I have a pulse. I know what's going on out there.
Yeah.
But, my market is folks like yourself. Your market is employers and candidates, which is, even that much more sensitive. There's a lot of people that are laying off. There's a lot of people that have been laid off, and we're not even at the end of it, so yeah, got to be careful.
Yeah. So I think that, the biggest thing, and I'll say that from a messaging standpoint, is just like anything you say, you have to have a level of empathy, and just acknowledging kind of the situation we're in, so,
right.
I still do, there's certain parts of my day, because my role at Hirewell now is very much running our marketing as well as doing a lot of kind of direct sales still, and still trying to find clients. And you can't put a hold on this, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely can't.
You have to, the world has to continue, but like your message and what you're going to talk about now just has to be a little different. And, you can make a joke out of it. Like, hey, I realize this is probably an absurd question. You know what I mean? Are you still hiring?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where the bigger thing is that, like, offering to help people however you can, with their own job search or their own situation or friends that they may have, and not asking for anything kind of in return for it. And this is moving more into maybe a little bit of a business shift. So one thing we've done, and this is something we've been wanting to do for a while, you just, have a million priorities, and it's trying to get around to it. But, we're calling it enterprise candidate marketing. No, that's not it. Executive candidate marketing. I knew it was ECM or something. So what we're doing is basically offering free not really career counseling, but job counseling services. So I've always thought that one of the bigger challenges which recruiting firms are not good at addressing is genuinely helping people who need the most help with their career search in general. Recruiters are very much an industry where we're headhunting all the time. Like, companies need a very specific thing, and it's our job to go find that very specific thing. And if you're a job seeker and you don't fit that, we can't really help you. Right. Yet we know more about job searching than probably anyone else, but it's not something that we're really, in the traditional model of working with companies, are really incented to help anyone with,
Right.
And my personal thing is, I've always been a pay it forward person. Like, I always talk with people. I always try to help them any way I can with their search and whatnot. But we decided to, especially with all this in mind, let's take it a level further. And, someday in the future, we might try to spin this off into a service offering, but we're offering a couple hours we basically put all of our heads together. We have people from very different backgrounds across the organization, very different expertise in terms of setting up interviews, in terms of resume, people who are better writers than others, people who have a different experience in kind of actually doing hiring and whatnot. Let's make our own best practices. Let's offer up our time, talk with anybody who needs help, offer up a couple free hours of kind of just a service like this, go through, qualify them like you normally would as a recruiter. Like, what are you looking for? What's your challenge been? What's your job search been? What's kind of what's been getting you hung up in the process and whatnot, and just help, it's as simple as like, there's so many people out there that, I mean this in a good way, that are clueless about job searching, not like as a knock on them. They just never done it. You know what I mean? They just,
it's an opportunity.
They might've done it 3 times in their career over 15 years. Like, you're not going to be any good at it,
Right.
And it's like, how can we and you'd be surprised, like, cause like I said, I've done this in a smaller scale for years, helping people out with just a few small tips here and there that make them 20% better at their job search, like, has a huge impact. So, I mean, that's honestly been like our focus over the last week, is trying to have as many of these kind of conversations with people as we can. And, seeing where things goes, it's just there's no strings attached, and, self-servingly, hopefully in the future, they remember us, you know what I mean? But I think at a time like this, like, we're doing pretty well, still as a business. We still have a lot of clients that are hiring. I worry more about people in general who, are really going to start having financial struggles and things like that. Like, that's really kind of the big blow to the economy here. And if there's anything you can do to, help people out just a little bit, it can make a huge impact in their life. So.
No, I agree. I think, I've been kind of putting it the way is like, this is a great chance to kind of be a human again, right? Even with your marketing and your messaging, is just to go out, be empathetic, address the elephant in the room, and see what areas that you can impact and offer some sort of value. I mean, now that you guys have kind of rolled this kind of executive candidate coaching thing out, like, what has been the initial results from the people that have gone through that?
I mean, people appreciate it for sure. I mean, we're like only a week into it,
Right.
So it's still really early. We've had a lot of our initial conversations started last week, and, there's some people we're having kind of the second and third kind of level conversation with now. We're having more people across the organization do it. So we're trying to standardize things a little bit. So we're kind of doing all this on the fly, but in the conversations we have had so far, I mean, people really appreciate it. I think that the key thing is it's not, it's something. Helping people get better at job searching isn't just a right here, right now thing like recruiting is. When you're a recruiter, you're trying to fill a position, it's very much kind of even if it's more of a strategic relationship with a client, still kind of you're fixing this problem.
Right.
But if you can assist somebody and make them more adept at networking and everything else that kind of goes into career searching, like, it's something that can impact their career for the rest of their professional life. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, like, I mean, so far people really responded well to it. Like, it's still too early to know how people got a job out of it so far, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's you're putting a lot of goodwill into the marketplace. I think all those things will come back at some point. And you mentioned that you were obviously changing your marketing message. I mean, what has been the results of you kind of making those tweaks and things like that? Are you seeing people responding still, engaging? They, appreciative of that, or?
I think so.
Any people that are telling you to go to hell, or?
Yeah, no, it's, I'll say this, from a marketing standpoint, when I say marketing, I mean like content, we're very LinkedIn heavy, obviously being a recruiting firm. We do something on other channels, Instagram and whatnot, but I think that, just kind of addressing the elephant in the room and providing tips that, like I said, are a level or two deeper than the obvious. We've gotten good feedback on those, and it's kind of what we hope for. In terms of sales messaging, so when I'm actually like sending direct messages to people about, whether they're hiring or not, I've noticed, and the thing that might make a change for me is like, I think this might change how I do all of my messaging kind of ongoing. I've always, my MO previously had always been just use as few words as possible. Like, the biggest problem with sales messaging, it's always too long. It's too boilerplate. So just like make it short, punchy if they need your help, I've gotten the most polite no's I've ever gotten in my career by taking this.
Never been to get shot down. Yeah.
Like a lot of my messages are like, hey man, I hope you're doing good. If there's any way I can help you out, I can help your friends out. It's that kind of tone. Right. And like, by the way, we if you need help in hiring, let us know. But that's ultimately what we're doing. And like, it's been a good response in terms of, I can tell that the no was a well thought out, respectful no they had to think about, as opposed to a unsubscribe kind of no. So
Good. So let's dive a little bit deeper on like the content side of things, when you mentioned that, obviously things happen fast. And, a lot of people still using Corona and talking about the coronavirus every single day and the impact. And then, like you gave the example of, okay, well, what can we do? Work from home tips, live video tips. I've seen everybody kind of come out with those different angles. So it's like, unless you're first, then you're, not creating anything new. Kind of the first question is like, do you think that because you've already seen it, like, what's your opinion? Would you still post it just to your own audience, even though you've seen somebody, for example, give like work from home tips? Did you hold off on posting that, or did you keep going with posting that?
Like I said, so I posted a work from home tip day one.
Right.
So that's early enough. Actually, we have a few more videos that we cut out of the podcast that Jeff and I did that were about team management. Which I think is a topic. It's still like there's a lot of legs to that topic, because I think that a lot of companies, shouldn't say a lot of managers. There's a lot of bad managers in the world, right? Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of people who are thrust into a position that weren't well trained, or there's a lot of companies that are remote working on the fly, and they're just lucky if everyone has a computer and can actually do their job remotely. But being a manager remotely over a remote team, you have to be better. Because any areas you lack in as a manager are amplified. People are out of sight, out of mind. You don't know when people don't understand what's happening. You don't know when people aren't clear on the objectives. There's just so much more that can go wrong, because all those conversations that you have on a daily basis that are kind of off the cuff and unplanned, like those are gone. That's, so you have to account for the fact. And I don't think that, people who are new to it, have never managed a remote team before, probably don't realize it takes a level of what would otherwise be seen as over communication just to be the adequate amount of communication. So more planned sessions, more planned check-ins, all those types of things. And so we have quite a few, we had a very deep conversation about that, and I'm going to be posting videos cut from that ad nauseam. That's what I do with content. And I'm glad we cut those, because I think that's an area people absolutely need help, because I think when it's all said and done right now, there's probably a lot of people working at companies where they just feel like they're on an island. And maybe they got their day figured out, but that's not the same as even from like again, I'm talking about empathy, like, how are you doing as an, you know what I mean? Like, you're stuck in your house as a manager. I'm saying, like, asking your employee, like, you all right? Like, how are things at home? Like, anything else stressing you out? What can we talk about? Like, those are the kind of conversations I think that people need to have more of. And we've joked internally that, like, I think I've had more heart-to-heart conversations with a lot of my coworkers, in the past 2 weeks than I would normally have over the course of 2 or 3 months, because I think that, and I think that's a lot of the encouragement. When I say encouragement from the standpoint of when you're doing content marketing, what I'm encouraging other people to do is realizing when you don't necessarily have that feedback loop as a manager, you might not even know that you're dropping the ball somewhere. You know what I mean? You might not realize that people might be confused about the work they're doing, not be on pace with their deliverables, or stressed out with life in general. And I think you have to have those combos. So.
Yep. No, and it kind of goes back, like I was saying, I mean, that's just the human side of things, right? And I think there's so much impact to be had by doing that right now. Like, I think that's who people are going to remember, is like who reached out, who actually helped them, who actually cared. And, that's where I think that, if you're playing this kind of for a long game, so to speak, which we have really no choice to do, is where we're going to get most of the impact, from our efforts, at the end.
Yeah, I think you have to think of it in terms of long term, because, like, realistically, like, your 2020 is probably shot. You know what I mean? Like, you might have a decent 2020, but most of the world is not going to kill it this year. You know what I mean? Yep. So, you just have to. This is going to happen every once a decade at least, maybe more. And just knowing that, making sure you're kind of setting yourself up better for the future is what you should be spending a lot of your time doing. So I think taking like a very people-focused human approach is one way. Another thing, completely off topic, and I don't even know if this is extremely nerdy, but we do a lot in terms of like a lot of data-focused work. I'll just put it in that bucket. Right. So it's kind of better on, like, not maintenance to the database, but finding new ways we can kind of target better and create new kind of solutions upon like different kind of data we have. It's a great time to do more strategic work like that.
Yep.
I think because it's the kind of stuff is important. It's nodes that you can propel you forward. But when you're when the market's hot and you're in executional mode and you're a recruiting firm like us, where you don't have a staff of people that do this, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
most people at recruiting firms like are, executional people. But this is a time when you've got initiatives, are important that, it's not busy work. It's just work that you wouldn't normally get to. Like that's the kind of stuff I think you need to spend time doing now too, because use it as an opportunity to get caught up and also set yourself up for when, things start picking back up again. That way you're able to even execute faster. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think now's the time, whether you're making a personal investment into yourself or, taking a look at your processes, your database, whatever it is, time for most people is not what it was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Now there's more free time, and it's important. Like I think there's going to be a big part of the market that really just kind of sits on their hands and watches and waits and hopes that everything goes back to the normal.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately those people are going to go away. I think there's people that are in denial, and I think the ones that really take a look at, what can I control right now? What can I invest in from a marketing standpoint? What can I invest in from a process standpoint and things like that are really the ones that are going to set themselves up to succeed.
It's just like any other market. I mean, when things crash and when they're at their worst, I mean, that's when there's the most opportunity. If you look at the financial markets or anything else, and it's a time to invest in yourself and a time to kind of propel yourself forward. And that's one thing I think of, like in the last major recession in 2008, 2009, like there were a lot of companies that, were very focused on single client, single focus, that went out of business, and it's why we spent the last 10 years diversifying our client base and why we spent the last 10 years diversifying our services, whatnot. But I think that looking at now as a time to, however you treat people, not like we're kind of repeating ourselves, but however you decide to spend your time, whether it's functionally as a business and what you want to spend your time on, or just from a content and the messaging you want to get out there, which these are two very related things. It's the best time to be doing like some sort of content marketing. You just have to be smart about what it is, doing very basic remedial, posting a link to an old blog. Like it's not the time for that. No one cares.
Are you putting a lot of, with your content that you're creating right now, are you including Corona as a lot of the topics, or are you staying away from that now? Like, what's some advice you can give on that?
I'm staying away from it. I want to touch on the topics that are related to what people are going through right now, but like addressing Corona specifically, like not a doctor, not a scientist,
right.
It's also like, I don't ever want to talk about politics, because that's the 1-2 ways this can go. You can talk about the political aspect, what's going on. You can talk about the financial markets, and you can talk about, just like how long this is going to last and play. But in any case, like, you're not there's a few paths you just don't want to go down. And the other one's like, I'm not an expert. Like no one wants to hear my take on how long this is going to last, there's better people out there that know. I don't even know if there are people that know what's going on, but it's,
do they know what's going on, or what do you trust?
According to the financial markets and the volatility, no one knows what's going on or how long it's going to last. So it's just like, I don't see a lot of value in being like a coronavirus hot take machine, which is why I don't talk about it. But I think the focus that, like I said, like our executive candidate marketing is something that we're focused on in terms of, we're developing our service, but we're doing it for free to pay it forward to people. If we have other topics we can think about, like I said, some of the deeper topics on work from home is stuff that I was happy we did. I'll have to look and see what else, like I think you have to kind of be in tune to what, challenges people are going to start going through. And like I said, we're only a couple weeks into this, we don't know how long.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be months, it seems ridiculous. And it already feels like it's been a year, but I think that the challenges people might start to see are going to change. I think there's going to be other opportunities to talk about stuff that we just haven't thought of yet. And I think it just kind of comes down to paying attention to what everyone else is doing and struggling with, and what topics what topics where we have some expertise could be of value. So
right. Those of you that are listening live right now, feel free to ask James and I any questions you have around content and topics and stuff like that as we're on this. What I've been kind of pushing is like, you don't want to be a part of the conversation around exactly what you're saying, like what your opinion is on Corona. Nobody cares. What your political view on Corona and how it's been handled. Nobody cares. Yeah. But, using the keyword and the buzzword is good to capture attention, but then do it in an area of like your own zone of genius. Right. So like I talk about like, hey, there's a market shift happening. Right. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. It's coming. It's here. It's part of the conversation that makes it very relevant, because if not, when you think about the average person and their phone behavior, in my opinion, it's like, what are they doing? They get up, they look at their phone, and there's like everything, if you go into Facebook, like the first 5 posts you're going to look at are going to have something to do with it. Right. Yeah. So it's like a balance, I think, of like being a part of the conversation, but not around the conversation of what's happening, but like, hey, how is this an area of my zone of genius,
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's the thing, is I'm always looking for other things we can kind of talk about in those areas. But I don't think you can force, I think that's the other thing too, is like, you just can't force things right now. Mm-hmm. Like if you want to be active in the content world, like being consistent and being consistent is like the number one thing I think to being successful at this, right? It's in the top 3. I don't know if it's the number 1, but it's up there. Yeah. Like you have to be somewhat consistent with your posting. But at the same time too, we're at a time where you can't force it either. So if you've run out of things to talk about, like on a certain topic, like it's not the time to try to be edgy, for shits, you know what I mean? It's not the time to, it's okay to not say anything today. You know what I mean? If you don't have anything. And I also think it's okay if you've got a lot of, I still think it's okay to go back to your old content, things you would talk about before all this, as long as it's not the salesy stuff. You know what I mean? Right. If there's other thing, if like I did a podcast 2 weeks ago that I have a ton of video on with a woman who's a leader of diversity inclusion at her firm, someone else who's a sales leader talking about sales hiring. I probably have 6 podcasts I did so far this year where I could still kind of go deeper into some of these topics, kind of, reposting videos from those about it. And it's all fine. It's just that that stuff I think is fine. I don't know if people are going to care as much right now as they normally would, but it's fine. Yeah. But yeah, I think there's no worse time to be Mr. Sales Guy talking about your product.
Yeah. Yeah. If you just tweak your message to support and help people, like we've been talking about, it's really no different in my opinion. Like sales and marketing are the same, right? Yeah. My world's a little bit different because there's a lot of people coming out looking for solutions right now, right? Where you can't create killer marketing that's going to make people want to hire.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's being a part of the conversation and how can I help people get through, this downturn. We talked about it before we got on here that like you guys are miles ahead. You guys have an online presence. You have a dedicated person to your team that does marketing. You guys understand the importance of this. And there's a lot of people that haven't even adopted the basic phases of it yet, and that's where there's a lot of opportunity. But there's more noise now than ever. You better be dialed in with your stuff, because, there's a lot going on.
Yeah. What, before we jumped on here, you were talking about, so you've been busy, it sounds like. Yep. Like everyone's coming to you for answers. Like if you were going to triage things, like, because I have a thought, like, I think I'll lead you into this one. Like the first thing you have to do is check in with your current clients, you know what I mean? And check in with everybody And I'd just be curious if what's the advice you're giving your current clients about like their triage plan, like the first level thing they should be doing, second level thing, like knowing that you're talking to places that aren't doing a ton of content already. Yeah.
The biggest thing is focusing on my clients and candidates first, being a human and not even asking like how it's affecting the business, but just like you're saying, almost like what you're doing with your own employees, like how are you doing? What's going on? How's this impacting you? And offering yourself as being a resource in any way, shape, or form there. So that's kind of the first thing that, I'm talking to them about. And the second is just pivot as quick as you can with your approach, with your direct messaging approach is, some of them we've paused to tweak in depending on what the market is and what they're seeing, with their specific market. Some of them have paused and are going to wait for a week or so, but they're just, everybody's kind of backing off on, the pitch approach and just, let's network, let's build relationships, which quite honestly doesn't deviate too far of what my approach is with my clients most of the time. I think that most people are tired of connecting and pitching in general, even in a hot economy. Like everyone's seeing it, they're tired, they're bored of it. And then just, from a content standpoint, I look at this as an opportunity as being a leader, and the way you can lead is through content, by putting your message out there, and, not from a chest pounding standpoint, but just being a leader in the marketplace, and showing up and, providing value in any way that you possibly can, and helping people being the focus. And I think that, the biggest thing I've really been preaching is, like, you got to play the long game right now. We can't control if we're going to get another, search or job order or another client in the next 30, 60, 90 days. What we can control is the effort that we put in, and the noise we make in the marketplace, and how much goodwill and how much we can help, but that's kind of where, focusing on what we have first, how can I help those people? And then, the thing about it is like, I still think, actually, I think now more than ever, you got to be pinning it. You got to be going full throttle. Your just approach has to be different, because there's so many people that'll be paralyzed into taking no action, that is going to create way more opportunity for you if you have a halfway decent approach.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think that, I think you're on the money. And I hope that people kind of take it to heart. And, I don't know if there's any other advice there is, I mean? I think that the flip side is, when you're trying to help people, and if you're making an empathy, if you're making an emphasis on empathy, and you're focusing now on helping others with their search and helping others with the problems they may be having, it's also an opportunity for you to learn from those people where there is value. It's an opportunity for you to understand, like I said, so we're working with a lot of people doing a lot of free pro bono work right now, helping with their career search, but we are asking for feedback, is this valuable? Like, did this work? What parts of this did you think were cool? What parts of this do you think were a waste of time? Because, like, someday that will be something that we can kind of spin off and use. But even back to your point about, like, topics of what you would talk about, I think it's also a great, like, any topic you want to discuss right now. Like, you don't have to talk about coronavirus specifically, but anytime you can, the best content is when it's a question that came from somebody, a real person. Whether it's something a challenge they had, something they needed help with, that's something you can always repurpose and do something with, whether it's a simple Q&A, whether it's hosting a video like this, whether it's a blog you want to, whatever it is. If you start with, start with questions and just answering questions that are kind of timely and relevant right now, is probably the best content you can create.
I agree 100%. I think, that's how that's what I try to help my clients make easy. Like, some people have so much of a content block. Forget about what's going on right now, just in general. Like, what do I create? Who wants to hear from me? What are they going to listen to? And it's like, why don't you just start telling stories about the conversations you're having?
Yeah.
It's that simple to get started with content. If you're listening to this and you don't know, like, I'm sure you talked to a client or a candidate today, and go post about it. It doesn't have to be that much more complicated. Like, so much of all my content comes from the mouth of my client. I'm not here to tell you what you want. I'm just here to listen to what you want, and I'm going to go ahead and deliver it. Right.
So I'll give you my quick cheat tip. So one, put an app on your phone. Every time you have a thought, write it down. And the regular normal person probably has 2 or 3 things that cross their mind during the day that'd be great things to post about. They just never write them down. They forget about it because out of sight, out of mind, it's gone. 2, anytime, if you're a recruiter, anytime you have a candidate or a client or someone asking you a question, whatever your answer is probably going to be a great post, because someone didn't know something, you told them the answer to it. The reason why that wouldn't be relevant to other people. So it's the second thing I do. There was a third, I lost it. Those are my 2 tips. So yeah.
Perfect. The third one will come back to you here in a minute. What's it like being on the other side of the chair, right? You're usually the one doing the interviewing.
Oh, it's great. I'm out of coffee. I think I finished the coffee before we even started, so I had to switch to water. Anybody who watches my podcast, like, that's I'm always like, I think I get dry mouth easily, or maybe it's a nervous habit. I don't know, but I'm always like drinking sparkling water or something, or coffee. Like, it's just kind of what I do. But yes, the coffee's gone. We moved on to water. You got me ranting about whatever. So I've already lost track of how long we've been. 40 minutes. Wow. I'm amazed.
Yep. It's been awesome, man. Is there anything else, any kind of, like, what do you kind of, I know this is a hard question to answer right now, but, like, what are you excited about with your business right now? Like, moving forward, like, what fires you up?
It's a good question. I'm excited to see where the thing is. This is all going to end someday. We don't know
Mhm.
exactly when. We know there's gonna be a light at the end of the tunnel, and one way or another, this is very much a binary event. It's not like 0809 we were in danger of the financial system collapsing, which would have been a complete calamity, like Great Depression style or worse.
Right.
Whereas like this sucks. Like there's no denying that. But at the same time, too, one way or another, the virus is going to run its course. Things will come out of it. It's just how long and how steep. But certain things about the world are going to change.
Mhm.
I think remote work is going to be seen very differently now. I think that one way or another, a lot of companies that didn't want to do it are now forced to do it and are going to realize that, hey, maybe it's not as bad as we thought it was. And
Right.
how's that going to change the complexion of hiring? So that could be different. I think there's a lot of other norms that could change kind of after this. I think people may have different patterns. I think even in terms of the grand scheme of the world, people are going to be more mindful about things they probably wouldn't have thought about before. So I'm excited. I'm more excited from a standpoint of the lasting impact it could have on business, which we could make our own predictions if we wanted to. But
Mhm.
I think ultimately a lot of things are going to change for the better. And from our business standpoint, I think it's just an exciting, like I like stuff changing, like
Mhm.
I liked building out more teams that do different things and building out different services and building out our candidate marketing line and building out this different stuff. And that's what gets me excited. So one way or another, there's gonna be more stuff that needs to be built and more stuff that needs to be kind of created at the end of this. And I don't know what it is yet, but we'll find
Mhm.
out. So
Yeah. No, it is exciting. I think that's the thing is like just trying to stay, motivated every single day and sharpening your mindset through this so that you can, it's fair to have a bad day over the next, 30
yeah,
days. It's a part of it, but not allowing to sink into depression. I think that's why it's so important to stay active, right? And everybody
yeah,
listens to maybe in a different position. Some people listen to this could be like you. Things have been kind of keeping rolling on from the business standpoint, revenue standpoint. Obviously, who knows what'll come from that, but then there's other people that everything's been stopped and wiped out. Everybody's
yeah.
in a different spot, and I think that, no matter where we're at, it's just waking up, taking action, doing the things that we normally do, realizing that there isn't going to be this normal will be a new normal. It's not going to be,
Yeah.
not going to go back to what
It's
we've experienced.
and I say this in a half sarcastic way that anybody who joined the workforce in the last 10 years, like they've only seen good times. Like they've only
Yeah.
seen the market go straight up, the stock market go straight up. They've only seen like unemployment get lower and lower. And
Mm-hmm.
this life's going to go on, it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the end of the world. Like if anybody who's, been working a little bit longer has seen stuff like this happen before, and it's okay. Like everything's going to work out. Like
Yeah.
you may struggle. A lot of people are going to struggle. But you just have to focus on, you can't get disheartened. You just have to
Mm-hmm.
kind of keep your head down and kind of keep doing what you can do, make whatever adjustments you need in your life to do it. And if you have the ability to help people out, you need to do it. It's just,
Yeah.
you might not have the ability to kind of change the world and fix all this, but if you can help out a few people here and there and everyone else does that, then, it's the best you can do. So,
Absolutely. And I think the thing that's hard to talk about right now, just because of where people are at, but the reality of it is, and we kind of touched on it before, like in any history, I mean, when the market dips, there's massive opportunity that comes from that. And I hate
yeah,
saying the word opportunity when there's people that are, going through, everybody's going through something right now on some level, but some are really impacted by the actual virus itself,
yeah,
but the reality of a downturn of the market is like, there's plenty that can be made if you're taking action on it. Right.
yeah,
The last downturn for me, I was actually working with my dad at the time in the floor covering industry, and we turned it into a major opportunity. We went into that downturn, we were under $1 million. We came out of it over 6 million.
hmm
It was all effort based.
yeah,
We pivoted, we shifted with the market, put our head down, we fought for survival. And because we were fighting so hard, we ended up just doing way more than everybody else. And we adopted,
yeah,
at that time we were adopting YouTube video strategies and, social media marketing that no other company in the town was doing.
yeah,
And I think there's the same opportunity right now, right? Is to take the action, take the opportunity and run with it and see see what kind of, market share you can gain
yeah.
from something like that. So, yeah, man, I appreciate you being here. How can everybody get in touch with you and follow you? I know you're obviously very active on LinkedIn, but
Yeah, so I mean, if you're out there, like, feel free to connect with me. James Hornick at Hirewell, or LinkedIn. You'll be able to find me. My email address is james@hirewell.com. So james@hirewell.com if you want to email me. So either way, LinkedIn or email, so hit me up. Happy to chat. If you need help with something. So
Awesome, man. What's one piece of advice you can leave the listeners with today?
one piece of advice: don't stop working out, man. Gotta hit whatever you can do. Gotta hit the gym. You gotta stay active. Like, the worst thing you can do is don't get soft in your home time.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, dude. Well, thanks again, man. I appreciate you being here. For those of you that are watching, we'll be live in the group tomorrow again at 11 Pacific for another live training. So feel free to join back in then. James, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Donnie.
See you soon.